So that was called Oh Glorious Love. I didn't really want the music to end this morning. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And for those of you who have a cough, so do I. Sorry about that. So I've got to unloosen my tie. Please excuse me. My parents up the front. So when you heard that Dwayne was taking the sermon today, thank you for all staying here and not rushing out the door and leaving. Too late? No. It's not too late. Oh, thank you for reassuring me. Yeah. Ruby did say that I've got unique talents, so I know where you live. That's it. Wasn't that amazing? Fantastic music this morning. Eric, happy birthday to you. Thank you for being here on your 90th birthday and for playing that item. That's incredible. Shall we have a prayer? Lord, thank you so much that we can be here this morning to open your word. May we have a good study and feel uplifted as we depart to your sanctuary in your name. Amen. So yes, my name is Dwayne and welcome to Maida Vale Church this morning. Karen, thank you for your hug. Loved it. It is so lovely to see you all. So just a little quick story about me. I'm 40 years old, plus 11 years. I went to Carmel College. I am a success story from Carmel. So anybody else here go to Carmel? Yeah? Okay, not too many people want to admit to that, but that's all right. On and off for Wayne, he was often expelled, so that's probably why. But I like to make people laugh. I don't take life very seriously, mostly because of my work, but plus the amount of times I've been married. So this morning, I've a bit of a death by PowerPoint. I love PowerPoint. I think it's fantastic, so I hope you can all see it behind me. Last week, Pastor Megan spoke about knowing Jesus, living Jesus' words, and loving like Jesus did. And then a couple of weeks ago, Pastor Jim took us on a fascinating journey through Irish history and the Christian faith in Ireland. So today I want to take you on a bit of a journey as well. I noticed the time is 11:45, so please don't have your alarm set for 12 o'clock. I might go about 5 minutes over. But this morning we're going to examine some fantastic, amazing people throughout history, their selfless acts for God and country and how they were merciful to others. So I always like to start off by acknowledging the volunteers that we have here at church. Church would not function or be a happy, safe place if we didn't have volunteers. And they do an amazing job. And as Terry mentioned, we're coming up to our next 2 years. So thank you, Terry, for volunteering to be our next head elder. Only joking. We haven't voted yet, mate. You're still safe. But look at all the things that we get involved in. Children's ministries, music, kitchen, leadership, cleaning, social calendar and church camps, the youth division, and then everything else falls into the bottom right category, organising anything and everything. Without this church, it simply wouldn't function. What a safe place to come to be in church. And I'm a huge believer that God has a sense of humour. Jesus probably was a little bit more serious, I think, when we look at his teachings, but God has a sense. I mean, look at the giraffe, the hippopotamus, the anteater. And then yesterday I was watching the news and someone caught a swordfish. And what's at the pointy end of a swordfish? A sword. And I'm thinking, how on earth can this fish eat its food with something this long stuck to the front of it? Great sense of humour. So I was wondering, firstly, Paul wrote a little passage to the Ephesians. He was giving them some wise counsel. So we are going to have a little bit of a Bible study today. And we're going to start off in Ephesians. If you have your book with you, your Bible with you, please turn to this. So Paul, who was an apostle of Christ, he was writing to the people in Ephesus. And it starts off in verse 3. He says, praise be to the God, chapter 1, that might help. Chapter 1, verse 3. Praise be to the God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us in the heavenly realms with every spiritual blessing in Christ. For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. Isn't that amazing? We're already off to a good start. And in love, he predestined us to be adopted as his sons through Jesus Christ in accordance with his pleasure and will, to the praise of his glorious grace, which he has freely given us in the one he loves. So verse 7 says, in him we have redemption through blood, the forgiveness of sins in accordance with the riches of God's grace, that he has lavished on us with all wisdom and understanding. Do people have all wisdom and understanding? No, not really. Now, in 1994 was the first time I was getting ready for marriage. Yes, the first time. I was 19 years old. So I'd had several premarital. Remember those days when you had to go to the minister and you sit down, you have your six sessions, try and say that fast, with the minister to convince him that you were appropriate for marriage. Well, guess who my minister was? Pastor Merv Tonkin. Boy, was he strict. You're laughing. No, I was petrified. 19 years old, I'm sitting before this minister, a man of renown, and he was giving me marriage advice. But he reinforced a text from Ephesians that involved much wisdom, and it's about how we treat each other, not just in relationship, but through our Christian journey. So let's have a quick look at this. Flick over to Ephesians chapter 5. Now, I got this wrong when he was questioning me about it. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 25. I started in the wrong text, of course, at verse 22. But verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In this same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one has ever hated his own body, but he feeds and cares for it, just as Christ does with the church, for we are members of his body. Sound advice, isn't it? Going into marriage as a 19-year-old. I got married at 20 years old, and there are some people here in this church who have been to all my weddings. So, moving on. Now, as a young man getting married, it can bring about some sort of fear and trepidation. But I want to show you something. If you're sitting around with your friends and you're having a conversation, and then something comes into your group or a circle that frightens you, there's a kind of two reactions that you might have. So I want you to watch the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Maybe some of you have seen this before.
جاي من غرف قلبه مدروش وشايف يقول لها شايف حيه وما حيه وتلقى اللي شافه برصي ولا ضب.
Okay, it's just a harmless snake, isn't it? But you can see the reaction from some of these people. And what did his mates do? Yeah, they took off and left him there. So God wants us to be happy. He wants us to live life, to love, to experience freedom, to laugh. However, sometimes the world beats to a different rhythm. Sometimes the world creates stressful situations for us. And how we deal with that stress is sometimes out of our hands because our body has different methods of interpreting and reacting to it. So throughout history, we see and we hear tales of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary situations. The Bible's full of challenging moments that create incredible and magnificent outcomes, rewarding people of courage. So, when you're in a stressful situation, sometimes the body reacts to acute stress, also known as fight or flight. Yep, that's right. Fight or flight. Now we're going to talk about some amazing people throughout history. And fight or flight. So Harvard Medical School published an article in April 2024. It was called Understanding the Stress Response. So the stress begins in the brain. When someone confronts danger or a dangerous situation, they see it through the eyes, they hear it through the ears, and then it sends the information to the amygdala, which is an area of the brain that promotes emotional processing. So the amygdala interprets the images and the sounds, but when it perceives danger, it instantly then sends a message to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a bit like a command centre, and the area of the brain communicates with the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary bodily functions. Breathing, blood pressure, heartbeat, pupils dilated or constricted, blood vessels opening and closing, and small airways in our lungs called bronchioles are all affected. So the autonomic nervous system's got two components, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the nervous system functions like a gas pedal in a car. It triggers a fight or flight response, providing a burst of energy so that it can respond to perceived dangers, but the parasympathetic nervous system acts like a brake. It promotes the rest and digest response that calms the body down after danger has passed. Have you ever been in a dangerous situation where you've just stopped? Your body's taken over and you can't do anything, you're paralysed with fear. So, or have you been in a dangerous situation where you've actually run away, fight or flight? So in 1997, I was stationed in Kalgoorlie, and somebody came at me, they were armed with 2 knives, and I ran. And running saved my life, fight or flight. Thank goodness for that, I was fit back then. I was 26 years old. So the research indicated positive results, which was completed at the Benson Henry Institute for the Mind, Body and Medicine for those who were suffering acute stress. They did this study at the General Hospital there in Massachusetts, and they learnt how to counter the stress response by using a combination of approaches. This was to elicit the relaxation approach. And these, would you believe, included deep abdominal breathing, focusing on a soothing word, and that word could be peace or calm, or visualising tranquil scenes, and here's one that amazed me, prayer, yoga, and the last thing they said and suggested was Tai Chi. Interestingly, the study also included this fact, and this is where I think church is a massive big help for us. Social support, social structures, confidence, friends, acquaintances, co-workers, relatives, spouses, and companions throughout all different facets of your life, of your social net, increase longevity. It's not clear why, but the buffering theory holds that people who enjoy close relationships with their family and with their friends receive more emotional support that indirectly helps to sustain them at times during chronic stress and in a crisis. Isn't that amazing? So let's start with some historic moments and examine how certain people reacted under extreme pressure, knowing that devastation is just around the corner. And some of these people are famous for all time. We say their name and instantly we remember their tale. As soon as we say their names, we know their story, whether they triumphed for good or created chaos and evil. History reveals the good and the bad in people. So here's a couple of names I want to mention right now. See what springs to your mind. What feelings and actions do you associate with this story? So I'm just going to say a few of these names. Number 1, Eve. Sarah, Abraham's wife. Lot's wife. What happened to Lot's wife? Noah's wife. Noah's wife. Queen Esther. Here's one. Have you ever called someone this? A Jezebel. Potiphar's wife. She was nasty. Ruth. Mary Magdalene, Martha. Rachel. Bathsheba. Hannah, Samuel's mother. And even Tom Jones wrote a song about this one. Why? Delilah. Thank you. So the Bible's riddled with circumstances of fight or flight, extreme stress, which causes people to react differently to the proposed danger. Now let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. We're already in Ephesians. So Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armour of God, Terry, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you've done everything to stand, stand firm then. This is verse 14. Stand firm then, and with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. Amazing, amazing, comforting words, isn't it? So, I want to flick you over to Joshua now. We're going to look at some people in the Old Testament, into Joshua. Very, very famous stories. So Joshua chapter 2 and verse 8. This is probably one of my most favourites, along with Queen Esther. Joshua chapter 2 verse 8. We're in the land of the enemy, the Canaanites. It's the Israelites now who are going to come in and invade. And Joshua chapter 2 tells us the story of Rahab and the spies. You remember this one? This is an incredible story, isn't it? Now, Rahab in itself, here we have, how would you describe her? Hardworking, probably works shifts. She's got many late nights to make ends meet. She's great at meeting new people, but no one's judging her. She told lies to save some strangers, and she defied her own native people to do what's right. She showed mercy to these foreigners in a time of danger. Let's see what her qualities are. So Joshua chapter 2 verse 8. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, so she's already hid them and people are looking for them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did at Sihon and Og, and the 2 kings of the Amorites east of Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts sank and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is a God in heaven and above and on the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and my mother and my brother and sisters and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. So they made this agreement, didn't they? Here is Rahab, a lady of the night, showing great strength, great courage, great fear. And she makes a pact with these guys. And then what happens? She's saved, isn't she? She lets them escape, ties a rope, and then her family is saved. The rest of the town is destroyed. Incredible. Let's go to 1 Samuel now, chapter 25. We'll look at someone else, please. Do you remember the story of Abigail? It's 1 Samuel chapter 5 and verse 2. Now we're in the time of David, King David. It's 1 Samuel chapter 25 and verse 2. Do you remember the story of Abigail? You don't remember this one? This is an incredible story. So if you're in chapter 25 and verse 2, a certain man in Maon who had property there at Carmel was very wealthy. So Abigail is married to a very wealthy man. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, and he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman. But her husband, who was a Calebite, was surly and mean in his dealings. Doesn't paint him in a very nice picture. Makes you wonder why this lovely, intelligent lady is with him. So when David was in the desert, he heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep. And he sent 10 young men ahead, and he said to them, "Go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name, and say to him, 'Hey, long life to you and good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is in yours.' Now I hear that it is sheep shearing time, and when your shepherds were here with us, we didn't mistreat them. The whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs went missing. We behaved honourably. So therefore now, can you please show some favour towards my men?" And do you remember how Nabal treated these people? So when David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name, and then they waited. And Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is this David? Who's the son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from the masters these days. Why should I take up my bread and water and the meat I've slaughtered from my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where?" And David's men turned around and went back. And when they arrived, they reported these very words to David. And what did David do? Do you remember what David did? Boy, did he get angry. You know what his plan was? His plan was to go back to Nabal's family and wipe them out, slaughter them, mass murder. Mass murder. He was so angry that he was mistreated this way after how kindly he treated them. But Abigail heard about it. Abigail lost no time. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seers and roasted grain, and 100 cakes. This is in verse 18. And she loaded them onto donkeys, and then she told her servants, "Go ahead, I'll follow you." She was fixing her husband's mistake. But she didn't tell her husband what she was doing. So as she came riding on a donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending toward her. They wanted to destroy her family. And she met them, and David had just said, "It's been useless. All my watching over this fellow's property in the desert so that nothing was missing, he's paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave one male alive." Wow. But then when Abigail saw David, she went quickly, got off a donkey and bowed down before him. She fell at his feet and said, "My Lord, let the blame be on me alone. Please let your servant speak to you." And so she pleaded with King David. This incredible courage. This lady, David had hundreds and thousands of soldiers available, ready to wipe them out. And she went. Pure courage. Incredible. So she was intelligent and beautiful, and she was a very wise woman in the Bible who cleverly saved her own household from a husband's foolishness and from King David's wrath. And you know what she did? She took him food. Her husband was so wealthy, and she just took him some food. So you know what happened to Abigail after that? She married David. Left her husband. He might have died, but she went. And then Abigail became David's third wife, and they had a child together called Chileab. Incredible story. So when we read Ephesians 6:12, we know that our struggle isn't against the flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities and the powers of this dark world, against the forces of evil. So I want to discuss another group with you. Have you ever heard of the ATA Spitfire girls or the Atta girls? Yeah? Incredible story. Has anybody heard of them? No? Great, one or two? Fantastic. You're going to learn something new. Incredible story. It was a dark time in our history. The year 1940, World War II. This period produced situational heroes and stories of amazing renown. Now, last time I took a sermon here, I think it was January, I talked about the heroes of the old and the men of renown. So these ATA, or the Atta girls, were a group of ladies, and they were also affectionately known as the Spitfire girls. They were amazing ladies and formed part of the ATA, which was a World War II fighting command. They were part of the fighting command. And when all the British men were off fighting in combat roles, it was the British women who came along and did other certain roles. They made bombs. They manned radios. They built planes and communication centres. Incredible story. However, the ATA, their job was to fly rebuilt, repaired, damaged and newly built British fighter aircraft from production factories to airfields of the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navies. And so they had to fly, because the men weren't around, they were off in combat, getting shot down, dying. And so these ladies, they had to fly all over the UK. They had to fly in all types of weather. They had to fly low to the ground to avoid the Luftwaffe. They were incredibly brave pilots. Some of them were just 18 and 19 years old. They had no ammunition to shoot back at the enemy. And this time in history, the pilot's average life was about 2 weeks. So the ATA girls, or the ATA girls, flew 415,000 hours. 415,000 hours of flying time. They deliver more than 309,000 different types of aircraft, ranging from small planes, Spitfires, Mustangs, heavy bombers, Lancasters, the B-17. And during that time, 174 men and women pilots of the ATA were shot down and killed. So here's a bit of a picture of the ATA group. So the ladies made up a small contingent and the men a larger contingent, but the job was mostly to fly planes that were empty of armour. Incredible. Now I want to show you this story. Now her name is Mary Alice. She's 101 years old, and I think this video was made 2 years ago.
When you get there, don't forget to send your signals, and then we'll come and collect you by Anson tomorrow morning.
The daily delivery of operational aircraft is only a man's job. Training machines and other less powerful planes are piloted by the women, and it's a job they're doing exceedingly well.
In fact, Mary was flying bombers solo, where men would have a team of 7 crew. There were other dangers too.
Along came another aeroplane beside me with the German markings on it. And I thought, oh, my goodness. Oh, I haven't seen one of those before. And I waved him away like that. And he waved to me like that. And I was so frightened. And I said, and eventually he did. Oh, thank goodness.
So do you understand all that? So she's flying an aircraft, she's got no ammunition, and as she's flying one of her aircraft, I think it was a bomber, the Luftwaffe came in and next to her, and she's telling this pilot, go away, just leave me alone, go away. Incredible. And then she says how scared she was because she knew all her friends were getting shot down. Remarkable story, isn't it? Fight or flight. So the ATA was disbanded on the 30th of November 1945. These brave ladies flew their aircraft for years throughout the war, knowing full well that every time they went into the sky, they were outgunned and they could be killed at any time by the enemy. So don't get me wrong though, there are plenty of people who are famous because they did the wrong thing in the eyes of God, because they chose to do evil. Places around the world become famous because they are associated with the infamous. And WA isn't exempt. We've had our fair share of evil. WA has had a community where evil's been inflicted upon us. And all I have to do is mention some suburbs like Claremont. Claremont. What pops into your mind when I say Claremont? Serial killer. Yeah, excellent. And in the 1980s, Perth husband and wife. David and Catherine Burney. Evil people. Do you know where Leongatha is? Leongatha is my hometown. It's where I was born. Do you know what it's now famous for this year? Mushroom serial killer. I'm going to go and change where I was born on my birth certificate. That's right. My hometown, a beautiful town in rural Victoria, farming community, is now known as a home of the mushroom serial killer. But let's move on to some more positive thoughts. And I want to mention and share some events that have happened to me, a bit of a personal testimony. There have been 3 very kind ladies who took an interest in me and shaped me into a better human being that I am today, arguably today. True acts of kindness, and they asked for nothing in return. They guided me in my path along my life when I needed the help the most. 3 strong individuals influenced me during my years here at Maida Vale Church when I was growing up, throughout my painful heartache of divorce, and through the good times. So I debated on whether or not I should mention their names just out of respect for them because I haven't asked their consent. But then I thought, well, this is my story and I should be shouting it from the rooftops to these people who've shown me kindness and guidance. So I'm going to start with Joy Hort, Eric's wife. Joy watched me grow up. Joy and Eric actually allowed me to do my Year 10 work experience in the bakery with them. That was one of the best 2 weeks of my life. I was at Carmel Year 10, and of course you had to go out and do your Year 10 work experience. I was included in family events, Christmas lunches. Joy always gave me reassurance and words of advice, even when I didn't want it or I didn't think that I needed it. And after one long-term relationship broke down and failed, I was so heartbroken. I was really down. And I remember telling Joy, hey, so-and-so and I have split up now. And she looked at me and started laughing. Then she said, I told you not to do it. Yeah, so her honesty and harsh truth were a quality that I endeared, Joy was also a cradle roll teacher for many, many years. She was taken from this world far too soon, about 17 years ago. Far too soon. So the next wonderful lady that influenced my life here at Maida Vale was Jeanette Douglas. She's an inspiring and wise lady, quiet and thoughtful. Also, when my heart was broken, Jeanette and Kevin were there for me as a single dad. They gave me sound advice. Jeanette was kind and she had a good sense of humour. And in 2006, when my local minister refused to marry me, my minister here at Maida Vale Church, marry me to my fiancée, Jeanette and Kevin put me in contact and suggested Lynn Burton. Lynn Burton, who did marry me, and now Alison and I have been together 20 years. This is our 19th wedding anniversary, or 18th, I can't remember now. Hang on, 19th wedding anniversary in March this year in France. Incredible. Jeanette and Kevin Douglas. Ruby McGill, words cannot express what an incredible person Ruby is. She's been such a positive influence, selfless, radiant, and caring beyond words. When I was a single dad with 2 little ones in primary school, Ruby would be up at 5:20 in the morning, accept my kids at the front door, so I could start work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then she'd take my kids to school and pick them up from school. And many, many times, Ruby would have dinner prepared, waiting for me when I picked them up in the afternoon. This went on for 6 months until I could sort something else out with work. And when I remarried in 2006 to Alison, at my wedding reception, it was time for speeches. And Ruby gave me the most kind and inspiring speech. She talked about my resilience and ability to bounce back after adversity, but Ruby had suffered so much already. Amongst the good times, she had surviving her own medical trauma and caring for Ian. Many other trials went away. And Ruby's been a carer for over 30 years. Can you believe that? Over 30 years, Ruby's cared for other children. And you know what? Another amazing thing about Ruby, she was the only one that didn't ask for a wedding present back if I got divorced again. Thank you, Ruby. Yeah. So, we shouldn't forget the other time in history about Jesus and his messages. We hand down and we tell each other stories of comfort, about the good people who go out of the way to help others, sometimes at their own peril. And history is where we can learn lessons and draw inspiration. Then we write our own history using our own footsteps. When we reflect upon the life and teachings of Jesus, we learn that Jesus, he wasn't a soldier. He didn't fight for land or lead armies. He cherished the fair agenda, overtly protecting them from sarcastic men who wanted to ruin reputations and make a scene. When it was time for fight or flight, Jesus stayed in the midst of danger. He stared down the enemy. Jesus didn't fight back or back down from a fight. He stood his ground and he offered reason without violence. Jesus protected women from adversity, from verbal harm, from public humiliation. Jesus showed incredible sympathy and healing when others did not. This is the character of all men should subscribe. We are to know Jesus' teachings. We are to have the knowledge of Jesus, to be respectful to those who come our way, to show admiration and to love all people. Let's have a look at Genesis 6:4. That refers to the heroes of old, my former sermon, men of renown. But here at Maida Vale today, in this community, the heroes and women of renown are right here, right amongst us. They walk with us. Some work silently behind the scenes, some up the front, some with incredible talents, and others who simply show up and just give you a hug and a smile. I'm going to turn to Proverbs, just in closing, Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31. And we're going to start at verse 10. Proverbs 31, verse 10. A wife of a noble character, who can find? She is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life, and she selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She's like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it's still dark, and she provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. In her hand, she holds a distaff and grasps a spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. And when it snows, she's got no fear for her household, for all of them are clothed in scarlet. And the last verse is, she is clothed with strength and dignity. So from me, to all the ladies and future ladies here at Maida Vale, I salute you and I thank you for your service. May we all take up the good fight on the earthly home until we reach heaven. Thank you.